words.
Jack and Jill went up the
hill
to fetch a pail of
water.
Then, simple sentences.
Happy birthday, Daddy. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
And then, full grammatical productions.
If the dog makes a wee-wee in the house, if you have to make him housebroken, if he makes a wee-wee in the apartment, you have to slap him with a newspaper. Then if he doesn't do it again, he's housebroken.
If you follow children along the path of learning a language, you'll pass crying, cooing, babbling, and the first word. The first word comes around the first birthday. By the second birthday, you'll have passed another marker, the first time a child combines two words to form a primitive sentence. From that point on, language development accelerates rapidly. Children enter a period of life that's biologically primed for learning, and they soak up vocabulary as at no other time. They figure out the how-tos of language, the rules that enable them to combine words into complete, grammatically correct sentences. This program is about the significance of the first two-word sentence and what follows in its aftermath, about the way children figure out the rules of language without being explicitly taught, about the mistakes they make in grammar and pronunciation and what those mistakes mean, and about the astonishment of parents as their children make the transition from words to sentences.
In the grocery store last weekend, where at Myers they have a lobster bin over by the seafood, and she was just intrigued with lobsters. Just thought those were the neatest things. There's a big bunch of these things just sitting in there, and then every now and then one of them would kind of, stretch its tail out a little bit and walk around. So we'd sit and wait, and she called them leopards, and then they would move. And I just said at one time, I said, "See, he's moving. Look at him move." So we left that area, and we're getting over near the checkout lane, and then all of a sudden she's, "Lapper, move."
This is a story of Catherine told by her father. Catherine was about 20 months old when she crossed a major linguistic threshold and formed her first sentence. Her father and mother were quick to record another sentence.
Mommy's busy.
Mommy's busy. You're busy.
Lobster move, mommy busy. According to Professor Jill de Villiers, these are especially significant landmarks.
For me, the two-word utterance, when the child begins to put two words together into combination to mean something more than the two words in isolation, that to me is a bigger breakthrough towards human language than is the appearance of the first word. Chimps seem to be able to produce words. It's very difficult to find evidence that other species are capable of making sentences.
Humans can make sentences because they use rules. Take three words, dog bites man, and reverse their order. Man bites dog. You've changed the meaning entirely. That's because the English language has rules governing word order. The initiator of an action precedes the verb, the receiver of an action follows it. Amazingly, in their first two-word sentences, children get the rules right. Catherine said, "Lobster move." Move lobster would have meant something quite different. A grammatical rule was evident in her first two-word sentence. You can begin looking for two-word sentences when a child is 1.5. By the time a child is 2, you should have found some. But don't be taken in by lookalikes.
Baby doll.
There's the baby doll.
Audie.
All done.
Baby doll and audi for all done. To Catherine, these are long single words. She doesn't yet use baby or doll or all or done in combination with other words. For example, baby puppy, baby horsey, along with baby doll. Or mommy done, daddy done, along with all done. Professor de Villiers.
When you have the words appearing in isolation and in combination with one another to make for differences in meaning, then you have the beginnings of true sentences.
Words in isolation and in varied combination. That rules out baby doll and audi as true sentences. It rules in lobster move and mommy busy. The stage of two-word sentences comes at the same time in all the world's cultures. This points to the existence of a common timetable in the biological clock for the maturing brain and nervous system. It's interesting to compare the timetables of deaf children who sign and hearing children who speak. The two babble at about the same age, but deaf children produce their first signs sooner than hearing children produce their first words, and they maintain the advantage when it comes to forming two-word or two-sign combinations. At first, using the hands is easier than using a complex, slowly developing vocal tract. Whether signed or spoken, and no matter what the language, the first two-word sentences of a child quickly become three- and four-word sentences. In the beginning, these sentences maintain a certain form, which is easy to spot if you compare it with the adult form of the same expression. Here's Catherine imitating her mother about 3.5 months after lobster move.
You made a big line.
Make big line.
You made a big line is the adult form. Make big line is the child's form. The child takes the adult's speech, drops the grammatical bits and pieces, and in effect makes a telegram, make big line. The grammatical bits and pieces that 2-year-olds drop are usually articles, conjunctions, prepositions, and so on. In 2-year-old speech, there are no ifs, ands, or buts. Here's an example of a 3-word telegram from Catherine.
Better hop to it before the water gets cold.
Board is told.
Yeah, I don't want it to get too cold.
Board is told.
And here's a 4-word telegram.
Looks like a mirror. She can see herself.
Oh, yeah. We can watch out.
Water gets cold, baby can watch self. This is how Catherine systematically abbreviates her mother's speech. But what do adults do in response to telegrams? Listen to this extended conversation between Catherine and her mother. Several telegrams, 2, 3, or 4 words in length, will appear in it. See if you can spot them, and then listen to the way Catherine's mother responds to them. Catherine is now 2 weeks shy of her 2nd birthday. She and her mother are building a house with blocks, and it's almost bedtime.
Boy, that's very good.
That's really good. Have tea party now.
Would you like to have a tea party?
Yeah?
Okay. Who's coming to our tea party?
Mary. Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins?
Oh.
Well, that'll be fun. Why don't you get one person? Get one of your many people. Can you get one of the people and put him in the house?
This nice house.
Very gently. There, she's in the house.
Yeah. Billy Boy the house.
Put Billy Boy in the house.
Hey, this nice house.
It sure is.
Yeah. More busy.
You are real busy today.
Yeah.
You've had a very busy day. It's 9 o'clock at night and you're still very busy.
Yeah.
Jeez. I don't know. I don't think any more people are going to fit. Do you?
Yeah.
Can we make them all fit?
Yeah. Oh. One more time. One more time.
One more time?
One more time turned into 3 more times. During all the ups and downs of the house, neither Catherine nor her mother were aware of what was taking place linguistically. But we can listen more closely. Here are some of Catherine's telegrams. First, a 2-worder, real busy. Listen to what her mother says in response.
More busy.
You are real busy today.
Yeah.
You are real busy today. Catherine's mother rephrases the telegram and puts the grammatical bits and pieces back in. Here's another example. Have tea party now.
Have tea party now.
Would you like to have a tea party?
Yeah.
Once again, Catherine's mother restates the idea in a complete sentence. Would you like to have a tea party? If children abbreviate adult speech to get a telegram, adults lengthen children's speech to get a complete sentence. The grammatical bits and pieces the child drops are the very bits and pieces the adult puts in. Sometimes the adult merely adds to what the child says. Take Catherine's telegram, Billy Boy into house.
Billy Boy the house.
Put Billy Boy in the house.
Sometimes the adult rephrases or affirms, as after this nice house.
This nice house.
It sure is.
Yeah.
This process, the child abbreviating and the adult lengthening in complete grammatical sentences, calls the child's attention to rules. But it's all done implicitly. For Catherine and her mother, language is a vehicle not for correctness, but for meaning.
What's for that?
What's my necklace?
That's my necklace. That's a necklace.
Yeah. I love you, sweetie. Can I have a big kiss? Where's my kiss? That's nice.
I love you.
As the child abbreviates adult speech to make telegrams, and as the adult expands children's speech to make complete sentences, the child is actively experimenting with rules. You can see the experimentation when something like this happens.
As we tour the neighborhood when we go on a walk or something, identifying things and picking them up, like sticks, leaves when she'd come across them, little stones, we have little collections of stones that we come back with after we go for walks. And when we get up to a dirt pile, it's many dirts, and let's go play in many dirts.
Many dirts is proof that learning a language is not simply a matter of imitation. Professor de Villiers.
When the child says many dirts or many sheeps, you see that he has extracted the rule that tells you how to make a plural in English. We can tell that because he's produced one that adults have never said to him, one hopes.
So powerful is the desire to create rules and apply them to every case that a child might give up a correct imitation for an incorrect overextension of a rule. Here's the mother of a 2-year-old named Karis.
It's like she's really trying to do it on her own now. I really think before she mimicked a lot of what we said, but she's trying to work out a lot of things on her own now. We'd be looking through her storybooks and I would say, there are the mice, and later on she would say, there are the mice. But now she no longer does that. Now she'll say mouses.
Professor de Villiers.
In many aspects of language development, you see evidence of an apparent regression that is in fact a step forward. And this is one of those examples. The child who earlier said mice might have learned it as a whole word and not really learned that mice is the plural of mouse. And then when the child begins to learn that to make a plural, you put an S on the end of the word, suddenly that becomes true of all of his vocabulary, not just those that he's heard from adults, but everything. And so now he takes the word mouse out of his mental dictionary and sticks an S on it to make it 2 mouses.
Under the power of rules, a child who once said, I came, might switch to, I comed. He or she might change, I went, to, I goed. If in the past the kitty fell down, now, according to Karis,
Kitty fell down.
English is a language in which a child's fascination with rules is especially evident.
There are all kinds of bits and pieces of other languages that have been combined together to make modern English, and English is still changing, with the result that there are lots of little pitfalls because English has an exception in that particular case. So there are words like sheep, where you don't say many sheeps, or foot, where you don't say many foots. So there are lots and lots of places where the child can make an overgeneralization.
And when you're 3 years old, you're eager to overgeneralize a rule. You don't say, I knew him. You say instead,
I know Tom. I really love Tom. He's a funny guy.
At 5, a pattern of redundant usage, of grammatical overkill may appear. You don't talk about your best friend. You use the super superlative.
Katie and Lisa. Those are my bestest friends.
Most of this overzealous use of rules disappears by 6 or 7. But once in a while, even 8-year-olds will make doubly sure a rule is applied.
It's taller, because the glass is more skinnier.
Professor de Villiers believes there's little to gain from correcting a young child's grammatical errors. Most go away by themselves.
The evidence on correction of children's speech is very shaky. It looks as if adults can ignore all kinds of mistakes that young children make. As long as the meaning is clear, then parents essentially see through the imperfect grammar to the meaning that the child is expressing. and go on as if the child had made a perfect adult sentence. Children just need exposure to hearing adults speak, and those errors will go away by themselves.
2-year-old Karis began experimenting with rules when she was 21 months old. At that time, her parents recorded sentences of 2 words.
No shoe. Daddy's shoe. Daddy's shoe.
You put daddy's shoes on your doll?
Then she started to struggle with something.
I believe she was thinking of what she wanted to say, but she didn't have the ability to say it yet. So she would say things like, and then she would say, I want juice.
We used to joke about it because she'd be going on. It seemed like she'd be making this noise for upwards of a minute before the sentence would finally come out. And so we start to joke about the warm-up and the pitch.
Keep that for Dada.
A month or 2 later came an explosion. Karis's vocabulary spurted, her sentences lengthened. 6 months after new shoe, daddy shoe, while playing an imaginary game with her mother, Karis produced a 14-word sentence.
Hold that out for me so I can reach up to the honey tree.
Hold that on for me so I can be up to the honey tree. 14 words and grammatically correct. Listen to a bit more of what she said.
Hold that out for me so I can reach up to the honey tree. I'm standing up on a honey tree and reaching honey leaves. Look at how me is.
Karis concludes with, look at how me is. Her grammar isn't perfect yet, and it won't be for several years, but she's made amazing progress on her own with rules. Right now, she's a little scientist devising her own experiments with English.
A, B, C, D, E, F, D, H, I, J, K, L, M, P, Q, R, S, T, U, P, W, X, Y, Z.
This is Karis at 2 years and 3 months. Unless you knew the alphabet song, you'd have a hard time understanding her. That's because the maturation of the vocal tract runs behind the development of other biological systems involved in language. The auditory system is ready for hearing at birth. The brain and nervous system are ready for combining words into sentences between 1.5 and 2. The vocal tract, that highly sophisticated mechanism that enables us to articulate complex sounds, is the last to come online. And so children make accommodations as they try to produce the sounds of their language. Professor de Villiers.
In the period of time between about 18 months and 3, children, again, all over the world, this isn't just in English, have a preference for certain kinds of pronunciations. And among those preferences are, for example, they can't tolerate easily consonant clusters. A word like spoon will be reduced to poon, for example. Or a word that has many different syllables will be instead reduced to something like a reduplication. So instead of a word like ice cream, the child might say meme.
Consonant clusters are reduced to a single consonant. So standing becomes sanding.
I'm standing up on a honey tree.
And tree becomes tea.
I'm standing up on a honey tree.
In other children, scared becomes cared.
I cared.
You were what?
I cared.
You were scared? How come?
Well, 'cause
He might have been scared of an itsy-bitsy biter.
Bitsy Pido went up the water path. Down came the rain, dropped the Pido off.
Children also like to reduplicate sounds, or at least have them come from the same part of the mouth. So good comes out good.
Boy, that's very good.
It's really good.
Water doesn't get cold, it gets towed.
Boat is towed. Boat is towed.
And a reduplicated jungle gym becomes
A gungo dam. I can climb all high on a gungo dam.
Though 2-year-olds can't produce correctly articulated speech, they can recognize it. One girl asked her father for a yayo-yayi pop. Her father said, "You want a yayo-yayi pop?" She said, "Dad, you talk funny." Our children have a harder time with spoken language than with sign language, and that may be telling us something about our past. Some theorists suggest that the human vocal tract is of rather recent evolutionary vintage, that in the history of our species, manual signing preceded speaking. If this is indeed the case, we gained an immense advantage by switching from sign language to speech. We could communicate more rapidly and at a greater distance. We could speak to someone not facing us. Most importantly, we could keep our hands free for other activities. We'll never know for sure what happened in the past, but we do know the outcome. A unique and complicated vocal tract that takes time to mature. Until it does, maybe only a parent will understand what a 2-year-old is trying to say. Karis's mother had a chance to listen to a recording of Karis that was made 6 months earlier.
I couldn't even understand what she said initially. Isn't that interesting? I think she's progressed so much, and she's so much more clear now. I used to be able to understand that, but I didn't even recognize that.
And that was just 6 months ago.
Yes, oh, that's amazing.
Equally amazing will be the progress that Karis will make with vocabulary. A 2-year-old may have a vocabulary of 200 words, a 6-year-old between 8 and 14,000 words. This means that between the ages of 2 and 6, children are learning 6 to 10 new words a day, sometimes on the basis of a single exposure to the word. Think about that. Compare what a child does during this special period with what an adult does. Have any of us learned even one new word today?
I don't think anybody teaches young children to talk. I think by listening to human language, especially language that is addressed to them by a significant other person, I think children develop the language by themselves, essentially. I don't believe human infants are taught the language.
Like many in her field, Professor de Villiers believes that children develop language on their own because they're biologically programmed to do so. Though we know little about the underlying mechanisms, switches in the biological clock appear to turn on at the same time in all language communities. And what an incredible performance this programming orchestrates. Listen to the work of Tony Schwartz, who over a period of 12 years recorded the language development of a girl named Nancy. At birth, Nancy sounded like this. At 9 months, like this. At 14 months, at a year and a half,
Jack and Jill went up the
hill
to fetch a pail of
water.
Jack fell down and broke,
Cow.
and Jill came tumbling.
After.
at 2, there was a birthday party.
Happy birthday, Daddy. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
At 3, the prospect of Christmas.
If you put a toy store up and you say, I want a puppy and a whistle and a horn and a hat and a dress and a ballerina costume, that's what you get. But when Santa Claus can't bring you, you can't cry.
At 4, some advice.
If the dog makes wee-wee in the house, if you have to make him housebroken, if he makes a wee-wee in the apartment, you have to slap him with a newspaper. Then if he doesn't do it again, he's housebroken.
And at 6,
What do you think of the Russians sending the dog up in the satellite?
Well, I hope he doesn't get hurt. But if he does, I'm sure they'll send up a medical satellite.
At 8,
In school, we each had to do a report on someplace, and I'm doing a report on Hawaii, and we're taking notes and doing research.
at 9, something to look forward to.
This summer we're going camping, and in the month of July this summer for the whole month of July this summer I'm going to go to Brownie's sleepaway camp. It's all girls.
At 11, a subtle change.
You'll miss my hair, and it's very special for tonight. It's just the way I want it. It's in a page boy with a high top, and that's the way I like it.
And at 12, the beginning of a new season of life.
I'm taking guitar lessons, and that's fun. I take drama lessons after school, and that's great. And I've been working on the school newspaper. I might be editor next year. And I've been discovering boys.
Nancy's journey from cries to words and then to complete sentences is now a part of her family's permanent history. It's a journey all children make during that special period of life that's biologically primed for learning. Between 1.5 and 2, children fashion their first sentence of 2 words. After that milestone, their language skills improve dramatically. Their learning of vocabulary accelerates. Pronunciation improves as they gain control of their vocal tract. They figure out a complicated set of rules on the way to producing complete, grammatically correct sentences. And they do it largely on their own. All parents have to do is talk, listen, and maybe follow with amazement their child's journey from words to sentences.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Sing the ABC song all by yourself. Can you do that?